The Galactic Council had always prided itself on maintaining peace across the stars. For centuries, they had been the overseers of diplomacy, ensuring that no species became too powerful and that no race was ever oppressed. The Council had members from every corner of the galaxy, each representing the interests of their people, and they believed that they were the ultimate authority in the universe. But today, something was different. The humans, once seen as just another fledgling species, had begun to rise in power. They were no longer the meek, struggling species they had been 100 years ago. Over the past few decades, they had established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, one that had the potential to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. It all began when Commander Maya stood before the Council. She was the leader of humanity's delegation, a tall, imposing woman with a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. The atmosphere in the Council chamber was tense, thick with anticipation. The humans had come to negotiate yet another treaty, this time to ensure that their species would no longer be held back by the restrictions the Council had imposed on them for so long. The Council had expected another routine discussion. They had anticipated the usual political games, the back and forth of trade agreements, military restrictions, and the typical demands of human expansion. But something was different this time. Commander Maya looked at the assembly of galactic leaders, her eyes cold and unwavering. She had not come here to negotiate. The humans had already made their decision. The moment of truth came when she spoke. "We are done with talks," Maya declared, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. The words hung in the air like a dagger ready to fall. The silence that followed was suffocating. The Council members exchanged shocked glances. They had not expected this. The humans were supposed to be grateful for the opportunities the Council had offered them. The idea that they would simply walk away from the table was unthinkable. One of the oldest members of the Council, a wise and powerful alien known as Salor, cleared his throat. "Commander Maya, I believe there has been some misunderstanding. Perhaps we can reconsider." But Maya's response was swift. "No, Salor, there is no misunderstanding. We're done. You've had your chance." She turned her back on them, her long cloak flowing behind her as she walked out of the room. The other delegates sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. How had they lost control of the situation so quickly? What was going on inside the minds of these humans? As Maya exited the building, her mind was already focused on the next steps. She knew what her people needed, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially the Council, stand in their way. She had made a decision, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone change her mind. Back in the Council chamber, panic began to spread. The delegates from the other species began to speak over one another, their voices rising in confusion and concern. How could they just leave? One asked. "We offered them everything they wanted," another said. The truth was becoming clear. Humanity had realized their own strength. They were no longer dependent on the Council. The tables had turned. Zalor stood at the front of the room, staring out into the chaos that had erupted around him. His long, bony fingers pressed against his temple as he tried to regain his composure. "We need to understand why they've done this. Why now?" he muttered to himself. He had always believed that humans were weak, that they could never truly be a threat to the established order. He had underestimated them. And now, the consequences of his miscalculations were becoming terrifyingly clear. Outside the chamber, the first whispers of humanity's actions began to spread across the galaxy. There were rumors, faint and disjointed, that the humans had uncovered something that had given them the power to break free from the Council's control. The galaxy was filled with speculation, but no one knew for sure. One thing was certain: the humans were no longer willing to play by the Council's rules. The Galactic Council had always thought that they were the ones in control. They had dictated the course of history for countless species, and they had expected humanity to remain compliant, obedient to their demands. But now, humanity had made it clear that they were no longer playing the same game. As Commander Maya prepared to leave the Council's headquarters, Her thoughts turned to the future. She was no longer concerned with diplomacy or negotiation. The time for talking was over. The galaxy was about to see just how far humanity would go to claim their place among the stars. With one simple statement, Commander Maya had ignited a fire that could never be extinguished. The balance of power had shifted, and there was no going back. The Galactic Council was in crisis, and no one knew what would come next. But one thing was certain. Humanity's place in the galaxy had just been secured, and nothing could stop them now. The galaxy had always run smoothly under the watchful eyes of the Galactic Council. For centuries, the Council had ensured order, making sure no one species would overpower another. It was supposed to be the ultimate balance of power, a network of peace and unity in a universe teeming with diverse, and sometimes hostile, civilizations. But now, the very foundation of that delicate balance was crumbling. After Commander Maya's abrupt exit from the Council, things spiraled quickly. No one could quite understand what had just transpired. How could humanity, a once fledgling species, so confidently walk away from the table without consequence? Was it arrogance or something more? The question rang in the minds of every council member, spreading panic like wildfire. The council chamber was in chaos. The representatives of the different alien species, each with their own history and priorities, shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military retaliation, others feared the implications of a broken treaty, and some simply didn't know what to make of it. It was the first time in living memory that a species had dared to act outside of the Council's shadow. The Council's chairperson, a towering figure known as Veller, rose to his feet. His broad shoulders and striking blue skin made him stand out in the room, but even his imposing presence couldn't quell the rising tension. His face, usually calm and collected, was tight with frustration. "This insolence cannot be allowed to stand," Veller declared, his voice booming across the room. He turned to his closest advisors, each with centuries of experience in diplomacy. "The humans have broken our agreement. We cannot allow them to undermine the order we've maintained." The advisors nodded gravely, but the weight of the decision weighed heavily on them. They knew that taking action against humanity could have catastrophic consequences, but the alternative, allowing them to walk free, was equally unthinkable. How did they gain this audacity? Veller muttered under his breath. The chairperson's voice carried a hint of disbelief, as though he could not grasp that the humans, whom they had once considered minor, had outmaneuvered them. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Maya was already well ahead of the Council. After the tense meeting, she had returned to humanity's capital ship, the Vanguard, orbiting just outside Earth's atmosphere. Her mind was already calculating the next steps. While the Council stumbled with indecision, humanity had a plan. The Vanguard was not just a ship, it was a symbol. Over the years, the humans had made sure to build and refine it beyond anything the galaxy had seen. What had started as a warship for defense had become a technological marvel, a vessel capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blow. The Council had never seen it coming. Now, as the tension in the Council grew, Maya began to realize that humanity's time had come. There was no going back. Back on the Council station, the leaders of the galaxy gathered for an emergency meeting. The tension was palpable. Everyone was looking to Veller for leadership, but his mind was racing. He was fully aware that any military action against humanity could start a war, and war with humans was something no one was prepared for. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now, the consequences of that mistake were rapidly becoming clear. "What are we to do?" one representative asked nervously. "If we do nothing, humanity will continue to grow in power. They are no longer the weak, fledgling species we once thought they were." "We must act decisively," said another, a sharp-eyed reptilian leader named Rash. "The humans cannot be allowed to break our treaties without facing consequences. We will show them that their defiance will not be tolerated." Veller sighed. A heavy weight sat on his chest. He had lived through countless crises, but this was different. Humanity was not like the other races. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and most importantly, they had made it clear they were no longer afraid of the Council. "How many fleets do we have?" Veller asked, his voice low and calm, though his thoughts were racing. The room fell silent as his advisors checked the data. "We can mobilize a dozen fleets," one of them responded. "But it's not enough. Their ship, the Vanguard, it is unlike anything we've seen before. We have no real understanding of its capabilities." Veller rubbed his chin, considering the options. A dozen fleets, however powerful, might not be enough to stop the Vanguard. He knew that the humans had a power they had yet to fully unleash. Then, an idea began to form in his mind. A dangerous idea, but one that might just give the Council a fighting chance. "Perhaps we should consider an alliance," he said slowly, his voice a low murmur. "An alliance with the other species of the galaxy. If we combine our strengths, we might be able to confront humanity before they become too powerful." The room fell into stunned silence. It was a radical idea, one that could either save the galaxy or doom it. "Veller, that's madness," a voice protested. "A galactic coalition against humanity. We don't know what we're dealing with here." "I know," Veller said, his voice tinged with resignation. "But if we do nothing, the galaxy we know will cease to exist." The Council was faced with a choice: strike back, or risk being overshadowed by humanity's rising power. The entire galaxy was on the brink, and no one knew what would happen next. After humanity's shocking decision to walk away from the Galactic Council's talks, the galaxy held its breath. While the Council scrambled to assess its options, the Vanguard hovered silently in space, a behemoth of power, waiting for the inevitable. Back on Earth, Commander Maya sat in her command room, watching the stars flicker on the screen in front of her, her thoughts as steady and calm as the ship around her. She knew what was coming. She knew that soon, the galaxy would send its fleets to challenge them, but humanity would be ready. In the dark reaches of space, far from the bustling centers of galactic civilization, the Vanguard was more than just a ship. It was humanity's response to a galaxy that had underestimated them for centuries. What had once been a humble exploration vessel, designed for peace and diplomacy, was now a mighty weapon of war. Its sleek metallic surface hid unimaginable firepower beneath, a power born of both human innovation and a few secrets that the galaxy had never suspected. Maya stood in front of a holographic display, a map of the galaxy slowly rotating in front of her. On it, the symbols of the major galactic powers blinked like stars in the night sky. The Council's fleets were already mobilizing, their ships slowly converging on Earth's position. But Maya wasn't concerned about the numbers. She had something they didn't: the Vanguard. The Council might have fleets, but humanity had a secret weapon. "Commander, the fleets are moving." Lieutenant Park's voice broke through Maya's thoughts. He was standing by the communications terminal, his face tense as he observed the incoming transmissions. Maya glanced up, her eyes narrowing. "How many?" "4 fleets," Park answered. "One of them is already en route, while the others are preparing to launch from their stations. The Council seems to be making this a full-scale response." "Typical," Maya muttered under her breath. "They never learn." She turned back to the map. 4 fleets weren't a small force, but they were predictable. The Council had always relied on sheer numbers, thinking that they could overwhelm their opponents with their might. But humanity wasn't interested in conventional warfare. Humanity had something far more dangerous. "You're sure the weapon systems are primed and ready?" Maya asked, her voice low but filled with authority. Park nodded. "Absolutely. The Vanguard is equipped with enough firepower to wipe out an entire fleet in one strike. But we'll need to make sure we're not outflanked. The fleets are moving in tight formation, likely to create a blockade." Maya smiled slightly. "Let them come. We're going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Council, chaos was brewing. The decision to send fleets to Earth had been made in haste, But it was the only move the Council could take to maintain their power. A dozen species, each with their own interests, had united for one common purpose: to destroy the threat that humanity posed. They couldn't allow humans to think they were untouchable. If the Council allowed them to defy authority, it would send a dangerous message to every species in the galaxy. As Veller, the chairperson, stood at the center of the Council chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a grave mistake. The humans had taken something that was never meant to be taken: their place at the table of galactic power. They had claimed a seat that didn't belong to them, and the galaxy was now about to see just how far they were willing to go to protect their newfound strength. "We can't let them think they have the upper hand," Veller said firmly, his voice cutting through the arguments of his fellow council members. "We send the fleets now. No more negotiations. No more hesitation." "But Veller, what if they have something we don't know about?" A young representative from the Xanthal species, who had been quiet until now, spoke up nervously. "They've already surprised us once." Veller turned sharply. "It doesn't matter what they have. They're humans. They're unpredictable, yes, but they are still beneath us. We've controlled this galaxy for eons. The power of the Council is unshakable." But even as he said the words, Veller could feel a doubt creeping into his mind. The last time they underestimated humanity, it had nearly cost them the entire war. He could still remember the way the humans had fought back with nothing but their resourcefulness, their sheer will to survive. He had seen their courage. "Are we sure about this?" the Xanthal representative asked again. "We don't know what they're capable of with the Vanguard." Veller paused, his fingers tapping anxiously on the control panel in front of him. For the first time, the Council seemed unsure. They were used to victories, used to being the strongest force in the galaxy. Now, they were about to face an enemy that had no history of submission. The humans had never been a part of their plans. "This is not the time for doubt," Veller said after a long pause, though his voice didn't sound as sure as before. "We must move forward. We have no choice." Back on the Vanguard, Maya stood tall on the bridge as the countdown began. Her fingers hovered over the controls, the weight of the galaxy's expectations pressing down on her shoulders. The human species had just taken its first true step into galactic power. But the battle was far from over. The Council would come, and they would bring their full might. But humanity would not back down. The countdown reached 0, and the Vanguard slowly started to move forward, its engines glowing a brilliant blue as the massive warship propelled itself toward the heart of the galaxy. The first fleets were already on their way, and soon the two forces would collide. But Maya was ready. "You know what to do, Park," she said, her voice unwavering. Park gave a small nod, his fingers moving swiftly across the panel. "Aye, Commander. We're ready." The storm was about to begin. The galaxy would never be the same. The silence of space was deafening as the Vanguard cut through the stars. Maya stood on the bridge, her fingers lightly grazing the console before her, as if grounding herself in the reality of what was about to unfold. The ship hummed with power, the energy from its engines and weapon systems fueling a calm intensity. Each hum was a reminder that humanity was no longer the passive players in the galaxy. They had been thrust into a game where the stakes were higher than ever, and the rules were being rewritten with every passing moment. The galaxy was watching. The Council's fleets were already en route, and their eyes were set on Earth. But they hadn't counted on what humanity had done with its most valuable possession, the very ship they had dismissed as useless. The Vanguard was not just a ship. It was a statement, and it was humanity's response to a galaxy that had treated them like nothing more than pawns. "You've seen their formation, Commander," Lieutenant Park said, his voice cool despite the mounting tension. He was seated at the communications console, his hands flying over the touchpad as he analyzed the incoming data. The Council's fleets were advancing fast, but their movements were predictable. They were used to being the dominant force in the galaxy, and it was that arrogance that would be their undoing. "I have," Maya replied, her eyes narrowing. They're not even hiding their intentions. They want to intimidate us into submission. Do you want me to send a message? Park asked, his fingers hovering over the comms controls. There was a glint of amusement in his eyes. He had grown fond of the commander's no-nonsense approach, and it was clear that the decision to send a message wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about showing the galaxy who had the power. Maya hesitated for only a moment. The thought of diplomacy felt almost laughable now. The message they needed to send wasn't about talks. It was about survival. Send it. Let them know we're ready for whatever they throw at us. Park's hands were steady as he keyed in the message. It would be simple, direct, and sent with the full weight of humanity's resolve behind it. He hit send, and the message was on its way to every corner of the galaxy. The Vanguard's message would echo through the stars, a reminder of humanity's refusal to back down. In the heart of the Galactic Council's command center, Veller stared at the incoming transmission. The words were clear and cold. "We are not your subjects. Do not underestimate us again." He had expected resistance, but not this kind of defiance. A chill ran down his spine as the realization hit him. Humanity was no longer a species to be controlled. The Vanguard wasn't just a ship, it was the key to a new order. If they couldn't break humanity's spirit, they would have to face the full force of their wrath. Veller turned to his advisors, his voice sharp. "Prepare the fleets. We will end this now. We cannot afford to let this challenge stand." "Are you sure, Veller?" The Xanthal representative spoke up once again. "The humans are not like other species. Their adaptability, it's unpredictable." Veller's patience was thinning. "Enough. They will bend to our will, as every other species has done before them. We will crush them." Back on the Vanguard, Maya felt the ship lurch slightly as the first of the Council's fleets entered range. The tension in the air was palpable, but Maya was calm. She had prepared for this moment her entire life. The crew was ready. They understood the gravity of what was at stake, and there was no turning back now. "The first fleet is approaching," Park reported, his voice steady despite the situation. "They've started to fire warning shots. It's their standard intimidation tactic." Maya glanced at the screen. The Council's ships, massive and imposing, were closing in. Their weapons were primed, their shields raised. But the Vanguard wasn't just any ship. It was humanity's answer to the tyranny that had kept them in check for far too long. "Ready all systems," Maya commanded. "It's time to show them that humanity won't be intimidated." Her voice was calm, but there was a fire behind her words. Humanity had suffered enough. For too long, they had lived in the shadows, watched as other species played the role of the galaxy's rulers. But now, they had their moment. Now they would take their place at the center of the galaxy, not as subjects, but as rulers in their own right. "Prepare for combat," Maya said, her voice a whisper of iron. "This is just the beginning." The first shots rang out, and space was torn apart as the two forces collided. The Council's fleets launched a barrage of laser fire, sending waves of energy toward the Vanguard. But Maya had expected this. The ship's shields flared as the blasts collided, the massive defense systems holding firm. The humans had developed technology far beyond what the Council could have anticipated. "Shields holding at full capacity," Park confirmed. "They're strong, but we can take it." Maya nodded, her eyes still fixed on the screen. "Return fire. Show them what happens when you push us." In an instant, the Vanguard unleashed its weapons, and the galaxy trembled. Beams of destructive energy lanced out from the ship, striking the first fleet. The Council's ships shuddered under the barrage, their shields flickering under the onslaught. The human ship was swift, and its weapons, designed with precision and deadly force, were unlike anything the Council had ever faced. "Direct hit on their lead ship," Park exclaimed. "The shields are down." Maya's lips curled into a determined smile. "Let's make them feel the power of humanity." The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before, the true might of humanity. This was their fight, and the vanguard was their weapon. As the battle raged on, Maya's thoughts never wavered from their goal. They weren't just fighting to defend Earth, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. They would not be the pawns any longer. And if the Council thought they could crush humanity with force, they were about to learn a hard lesson. The stakes were higher than ever. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and the vanguard was their last, best hope. The battle raged on, but the tide was slowly turning. The Galactic Council's fleets, once a symbol of unmatched power, were now reeling from the unexpected assault. Every shot fired by the vanguard was precise, devastating, and calculated. Humanity had learned from their mistakes. They had studied the galactic powers long enough to know how to defeat them at their own game. And now, that knowledge was proving to be their greatest weapon. Maya's fingers danced across the control panel as the situation unfolded. The crew of the Vanguard was executing their orders with flawless precision, following every command without hesitation. The once unfamiliar feeling of power coursed through the ship, and for the first time, humanity was no longer afraid. "Commander, the lead ship of the Council's Second Fleet is retreating," Park reported, his voice shaking with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "They're falling back, and the rest are scattering." Maya didn't let herself smile, not yet. There was still much to be done. The Council wasn't going to give up so easily. This was their empire, and they had built it through fear, control, and manipulation. It was unlikely that they would relinquish it without a fight. "Keep pushing forward," Maya said, her voice steady. "We can't let them regroup." The crew worked with a unity that Maya had never seen before. It wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about making sure humanity would never again be seen as weak. The galaxy was learning that humanity wasn't afraid to fight back, and they would do whatever it took to make sure their voice was heard. On the command deck of the Council's flagship, Veller seethed with anger. The last few hours had felt like a nightmare. The humans, the species he had thought so easily dominated, had turned the tide with a single ship, a ship they had barely considered worthy of notice. He gritted his teeth as he watched his fleet scatter before the Vanguard's relentless assault. His once proud armada was now a broken shell of its former self. Some ships were damaged beyond repair, others had turned tail and fled, and a few had been lost entirely. Veller slammed his fist on the console. "Prepare the next phase of the attack," he growled to his officers. "We cannot let them have the upper hand. We will show them why the Galactic Council is the true power in this galaxy." But even as he said the words, doubt gnawed at him. He had never expected the humans to be such formidable foes. He thought their ship was nothing more than a poorly constructed relic, one that would crumble under the might of his fleets. But now, the Vanguard was proving to be a nightmare. "Sir," one of his officers spoke, interrupting his thoughts. "The Council's reinforcements have arrived, but the human ship, it's not backing down. They're still in range, preparing for another attack." Veller clenched his fists. "Then we will break them. We cannot allow this to continue." Meanwhile, on the Vanguard, Maya knew that the battle was far from over. Despite their victory in the initial confrontation, the Council wasn't going to go down without a fight. The arrival of reinforcements meant they would have to act fast. If they didn't end this quickly, the tide could turn against them. "Commander, the Council is preparing for a second wave," Park said, his eyes scanning the readouts on his console. "They're bringing in a larger fleet, and their tactics are changing. They're trying to surround us." Maya's heart pounded in her chest. The Council had underestimated humanity once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. They had thought the Vanguard was a fluke, a lucky strike against an unprepared fleet. But now, they understood the reality. Humanity had evolved. The Vanguard was not just a ship, it was a symbol of everything humanity stood for. And no matter how many ships the Council threw at them, they wouldn't back down. "Prepare for their advance," Maya ordered. "We can't let them trap us. We have to hit them hard and fast. The ship shuddered as it adjusted to the new formation, its weapons primed and ready. The crew moved swiftly, their eyes locked on their respective stations. The Vanguard was humanity's greatest weapon, and it was time to use it. "Commander, the enemy fleet is almost in position," Park reported. "They're going for a full surround. If we don't act now, they'll box us in." Maya's expression hardened. "Give them everything we've got. Open fire." Without another word, the Vanguard released a volley of missiles and laser beams. The ship shook as its weapon systems came alive, sending a storm of destruction toward the oncoming fleet. The Council's ships, attempting to surround the Vanguard, were caught off guard by the sudden onslaught. Their ships were larger, more powerful, but humanity's speed and precision were something the Council hadn't anticipated. "Direct hits. Their lead ship is down," Park shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the battle. "We're breaking through their lines." Maya's lips curled into a smile as she watched the screen. The Council's second wave was faltering. The Vanguard was cutting through them like a blade through paper. The tide of the battle was shifting in humanity's favor, and there was no going back now. Back on the Council's flagship, Veller watched in disbelief as his fleets faltered once again. The Vanguard was unstoppable. Even with reinforcements, the humans were proving that they had the will to survive, and the strength to ensure their survival at any cost. "Retreat," Veller ordered, his voice tinged with desperation. "We have to pull back and reassess. If we continue this fight, we will lose everything." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Humanity had made its stand, and for the first time in a long while, the Galactic Council wasn't in control. The battle was over. For now, the Galactic Council had retreated, its fleets broken and scattered. The Vanguard had delivered a decisive blow, and humanity had proven that it would never again be subjugated. The galaxy was forever changed, and as Maya stood on the bridge, looking out into the vast expanse of space, she knew this was only the beginning. The Council had underestimated them, but now they would know the true power of humanity. As the Vanguard glided through the stars, its weapons silent for the moment, Maya couldn't help but think about what was to come. This victory was just the first step. The galaxy had learned humanity's name, and they would never forget it. The quiet after the storm was almost deafening. The Vanguard drifted in the stillness of space, its engines humming quietly as the crew took a breath, savoring their victory. But Maya knew that they couldn't afford to rest for long. The Galactic Council wasn't the kind to accept defeat easily. Even though their forces had been devastated, the fact that they had retreated meant they were regrouping, planning their next move. "Commander, we've got incoming transmissions," Park reported, his voice tense. "It's the Council. They're demanding immediate negotiations." Maya's brow furrowed. "Negotiations? After everything they've done? We don't negotiate with those who seek to control and enslave us." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that Maya's resolve was as strong as iron. The Council's offer was nothing more than a ploy to buy time. Time to rebuild their forces and try again. Maya had seen enough of their tactics to know that they wouldn't stop until they had completely crushed humanity, or until humanity rose up and proved them wrong. "Send them a message, Park," Maya ordered. "Tell them humanity does not negotiate with tyrants. We demand our freedom, and we will stop at nothing to protect it." As Park typed the message, Maya stood before the large viewport, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. She knew that the Council was about to launch a final, all-out assault, but she also knew that humanity had already won. The galaxy would never see humanity as weak again. They had proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humans would fight back, no matter the cost. The transmission was sent, and Maya watched as it disappeared into the vastness of space. She wasn't sure if the Council would understand the gravity of her message, but she didn't care. They had been given a chance to end things peacefully, and they had failed. Now, there would be no more talking. In the depths of the Council's command center, Veller seethed with rage. His forces were in disarray, their fleets shattered, their honor in tatters. He had never imagined that a single human ship could bring so much chaos and destruction to their carefully laid plans. Send them a message, Veller ordered his officers. Tell them that if they want war, they'll get it. Humanity will be wiped from the stars. The officer nodded and began typing furiously. Veller's mind raced. They had underestimated humanity. They thought they could simply intimidate them into submission, as they had with so many other species before. But humanity had refused to be cowed. They had turned their back on diplomacy. And now they were standing at the precipice of total war. You will regret this, Veller muttered, more to himself than anyone else. We will show you what true power looks like. But even as he spoke the words, doubt crept into his mind. The humans had demonstrated an unexpected resilience. Their ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. Their tactics were ruthless, and their will to fight was unyielding. Could they really be defeated? Back on the Vanguard, Maya paced in the command center. Her mind was sharp, calculating. She knew the Council would strike again, and this time they would bring everything they had left. But Maya also knew that they were not ready for what humanity had in store for them. We need to be prepared, she said to her crew. They will come, but we will be ready. They'll be looking for revenge. Let's make sure they don't get the chance. Park nodded, his fingers already moving across his console. I've already begun analyzing their most recent transmissions. It looks like they've mobilized every available ship. If they come at us again, it'll be in full force. Maya glanced at the strategic map, her eyes scanning the Council's fleet movements. It was clear that they were planning something big, but so were the humans. We'll need to spread our forces across the sector, she said, her voice calm but decisive. We can't let them isolate us. We need to strike first, keep them on the defensive, make them think we're more than they can handle. As she spoke, the crew worked diligently to follow her orders. The preparation for the final battle was underway. And this time, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. As the final battle loomed on the horizon, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This was not just about a single ship or even a single species. This was about the entire future of humanity. If they lost, if they didn't succeed, everything they had fought for would be lost. Earth, the home they had rebuilt, would once again be under the control of tyrants, and humanity would be enslaved once more. But if they won, she clenched her fist. If they won, humanity would carve its name into the history of the galaxy. They would never again be underestimated. The universe would know that humans had arrived, not as weaklings, but as a force to be reckoned with. Prepare for battle, Maya said, her voice steady and unwavering. We are not just defending our home. We are fighting for the future of every human being in this galaxy. The crew, already poised for action, nodded in unison. There was no turning back now. The Council had provoked humanity for the last time. And when the dust settled, it would be the humans who emerged victorious. The stars outside seemed to burn brighter as the Vanguard took its position, the massive ship cutting through the vastness of space like a blade ready to strike. Maya stood at the helm, watching as the holographic displays flickered and shifted, showing the incoming Council fleet. There was no turning back now. The battle they had all known was coming had finally arrived. All systems are operational, Commander, Park said from his station, his voice steady, though there was an unmistakable edge of tension beneath it. We're ready. Maya nodded but didn't say anything. Her mind raced with the weight of what was about to unfold. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the ultimate test of everything humanity had built and fought for since their exile from Earth. If they failed today, everything they had worked for would be reduced to dust. The galaxy would remain under the thumb of the Galactic Council, and humanity would be crushed under its boot once more. But if they succeeded, Commander, Hark interrupted her thoughts. The Council fleet is in range. They're closing fast. Looks like they're not wasting any time. Maya clenched her jaw. Then neither will we. All hands, prepare for battle. The bridge filled with the sound of rapid commands as the crew braced for impact. Every human on board, the Vanguard knew what was at stake. The ship, once abandoned and forgotten, had become the symbol of humanity's resilience, and now it would carry that symbol into the fight that would determine their fate. Across the expanse of space, the Council's fleet gathered, a massive array of ships, each one brimming with advanced technology and overwhelming firepower. Veller, their leader, stood at the command center of his flagship, watching the holographic display of the Vanguard. His fists clenched as he watched the human ship, once a derelict piece of scrap, now fully armed and ready for war. They still think they can win, Veller muttered under his breath. They've had their moment of glory, but it's time to end this. Sir, one of his officers said, we have detected a significant shift in their ship's systems. They're powering up their weapons. It seems they're preparing to engage. Veller's lips curled into a twisted smile. Let them. They'll soon see that their precious ship is no match for the might of the Council. He turned to face his officers. Today, we crush humanity once and for all. The first salvo came without warning, the Council ships unleashing a barrage of energy blasts toward the Vanguard. Maya barely had time to react, but she knew this was coming. She had seen their tactics before. The Council would throw everything they had at them, hoping to overwhelm the humans before they could even get a shot off. Brace for impact. Maya shouted as the ship shook violently, the hull rattling under the force of the blasts. The crew held firm, each member knowing their role. Shields are holding. Park called out. We've taken minimal damage, Commander. They're trying to overwhelm our defenses, but we're holding strong. Return fire, Maya ordered. Don't let them dictate the pace of this fight. The massive cannons on the Vanguard roared to life, sending pulse lasers and missile strikes toward the approaching Council ships. The battle erupted in a flurry of light and sound, the stars themselves seeming to flicker as the two forces clashed. Maya watched the battle unfold before her, her eyes narrowed in focus. She knew that they couldn't just defend. They had to strike back, fast and hard, before the Council could regroup. We need to break their formation, Maya said. Park, target their command ship. If we take out Veller's flagship, their fleet will collapse. Aye, Commander, Park responded, his fingers flying across the controls, locking onto the flagship now. The crew worked in perfect unison, each movement calculated and precise. The Vanguard turned, lining up the shot on the Council's command ship. Maya felt the tension in the air as the ship's weapons charged. Time seemed to slow as she watched the countdown. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The entire ship shuddered as the main cannon fired, sending a powerful burst of energy toward the flagship. It hit dead center, causing a massive explosion. The Council's ship cracked and splintered under the force, its shields crumbling before the assault. Veller watched in disbelief as his flagship was torn apart, pieces of it disintegrating in space. For the first time, doubt flickered in his mind. Could this truly be the end? Was humanity really capable of such power? Sir, we've lost contact with the flagship, an officer shouted. Veller clenched his teeth. No, this isn't over. We will not be defeated by these creatures. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The human ship had done what he thought was impossible. And now, the battle was slipping out of his control. The Vanguard pressed forward, its weapons now locked onto the remaining ships in the Council fleet. Maya's eyes were sharp, scanning the battlefield, calculating their next move. The Council had underestimated humanity once again. They're retreating, Park shouted. We've broken their formation. They're pulling back. Maya felt a surge of triumph, but she held her emotions in check. The battle was not over. The Council may have been retreating, but they would come again. And next time, they would come harder. Keep the pressure on, Maya ordered. We're not letting them off that easy. And with that, the vanguard turned once more, its weapons firing relentlessly as the final remnants of the Council's fleet flood into the darkness of space. As the last Council ship disappeared into the void, Maya allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. They had done it. They had proven humanity's place in the galaxy. The war was not over, but the Council had learned one very important lesson today. Never underestimate humanity. And Maya knew this was just the beginning of a new era for humanity, one where they would no longer be prey, but predators, and they would carve out their destiny among the stars.